Mr. Cavanaugh, what's in the basement? The plumber asked it casually, the way you ask about a locked room when you need to check the pipes. No suspicion, no weight, just a man in coveralls trying to do his job. Neil Cavanaugh looked up from his phone. 48. Gray suit, no tie. The kind of face that looked trustworthy on camera and empty when the camera was off. Founder of Cavanaugh Properties. Net worth, $220 million. 3 homes, 2 ex-wives, 1 child, a daughter, Claire, 26, who lived in Portland and called on birthdays. Storage, Neil said. It's locked. You don't need to go down there. The main water line runs through the basement, sir. If the pressure drop is coming from the source, I said you don't need to go down there. The plumber, Danny Reeves, 53, who'd been fixing pipes since before Neil Cavanaugh made his first million, looked at the man for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, I'll check the exterior connection. He walked out the back door, knelt by the foundation, found the main shutoff valve. And while he was down there, on his knees in the dirt beside the basement wall, he heard something. A knock, from inside. 3 taps. Slow. Weak. The rhythm of someone conserving energy. Not pounding, not panicking, just tapping. The way a person taps when they've been tapping for a very long time and have learned that the difference between being heard and not being heard is usually luck. Danny froze, pressed his ear to the foundation wall. 3 more taps, then silence. He stood up. His hands were shaking. He walked to his truck, got in, locked the doors, and called 911. I'm at 1740 Briarwood Lane. I'm a plumber. I was working on the exterior of the house, and I heard someone knocking from inside the basement. The homeowner told me the basement was locked, and I didn't need to go down there. Sir, is it possible it's a pet, or it was 3 knocks? Spaced. Repeated. That's not a dog. We're dispatching officers now. Hurry, something's wrong in that house. Quick favor. If that sound just made your blood go cold, tap like and subscribe. Because what the police found in Neil Cavanaugh's basement changed the course of 9 lives, ended one, and destroyed a man who'd spent a decade believing that money could keep any secret buried. The officers arrived in 11 minutes. 2 cruisers. Danny met them in the driveway. Neil Cavanaugh met them at the front door with a smile and a question. Is there a problem, officers? Mr. Cavanaugh, we've received a report of sounds coming from your basement. Can we take a look? My basement is private. It's storage. Sir, we have reasonable cause to believe someone may be in distress. You can grant us access voluntarily, or we can obtain a warrant. Given the circumstances, a warrant would take approximately 40 minutes. Neil calculated. You could see it. The machine behind his face processing options, outcomes, angles. 40 minutes. Enough time to... No. Not with 2 officers already at the door and a plumber watching from the driveway. Fine, he said. I'll show you. He led them through the kitchen, to a door, padlocked. He produced a key from his pocket, not a ring of keys, a single key, kept separate, kept close. The padlock opened. The door swung. The staircase went down into dark. The first officer, Sergeant Marta Diaz, 14 years on the force, went down with her flashlight. The beam cut through a stairwell that smelled like damp concrete and something else. Something biological. Something that had lived in a closed space for too long. The basement was finished. That was the first thing Marta noticed. It wasn't a raw cellar. It had drywall, carpet, a bathroom, a bed, a small refrigerator, a television unplugged. Books on a shelf. A space designed not for storage, but for habitation. Long-term habitation. And on the bed, curled on her side, facing the wall, a woman. Marta approached. "Ma'am? Police. Can you hear me?" No response. "Ma'am?" Marta touched her shoulder. The woman's skin was cold. She checked for a pulse. Found none. She keyed her radio. "Dispatch, I need paramedics to 1740 Briarwood Lane immediately. We have an unresponsive female in the basement. No pulse." She looked around the room. At the locked door. The padlock. The single key. The bed where a woman had died in a room she couldn't leave. Then she went upstairs. Neil Cavanaugh was standing in the kitchen. His phone was in his hand. He was texting someone. "Mr. Cavanaugh, who is the woman in your basement?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "There is a woman in your basement. She is deceased. Who is she?" Neil looked at Marta. The machine behind his face was running hard now, overheating, overprocessing, the gears grinding against a situation that didn't have an exit strategy. "I want my lawyer." "You'll get your lawyer. First, her name." "I'm not saying anything without legal counsel." Marta looked at him. 14 years on the force. She'd seen a lot of faces in a lot of kitchens say, "I want my lawyer." But she'd never seen a man text while standing above a dead woman in his locked basement. "Neil Cavanaugh, you're being detained pending investigation. Please put down the phone." "I'm calling my attorney." "You can call your attorney from the station. Put down the phone." He put it down. Slowly. The way a man puts down a weapon when he's not sure he's done using it. They took him out in handcuffs. Not because they'd charged him, because a dead woman in a padlocked basement constituted enough probable cause for detention, and Marta Diaz wasn't in the mood for ambiguity. Danny Reeves watched from his truck. He didn't move. He sat behind the wheel and stared at the house where he'd come to fix a water pressure problem, and had instead heard 3 knocks from a woman who was already dying. If he'd come a day earlier, an hour, if the pipe hadn't dropped pressure this week, if the tenant in Neil's rental unit hadn't called, if Danny had checked the exterior first instead of the interior. He didn't finish the thought. Some thoughts don't have endings. They just have weight. Tap like if you believe that some truths are found by accident, and the accident is the only mercy. Because what the investigation uncovered over the next 72 hours proved that Neil Cavanaugh had been hiding more than a woman. He'd been hiding an entire life. The woman's name was Elena Torres. She was 34. She'd been reported missing 9 years ago, at 25, by her mother, Rosa Torres, from a suburb 40 miles south. The missing persons report described a young woman who'd been working as an office assistant at a property management company. She'd left work on a Friday evening in October and never arrived home. Her car was found 3 days later in a parking garage downtown. Keys in the ignition, purse on the seat, phone inside. No signs of struggle. The case went cold within a year. No witnesses, no leads, no body. Rosa Torres called the detective assigned to the case every month for 5 years. Then every quarter. Then every 6 months. She never stopped calling. The forensic team spent 48 hours in Neil Cavanaugh's basement. What they found was a room that told a story in layers. 9 years of captivity documented in the objects, the surfaces, the wear patterns of a life lived in 400 square feet. The bed had been replaced 3 times. The frame was the same, but the mattress showed distinct compression patterns. The carpet was worn in a path between the bed, the bathroom, and the refrigerator. The same route, walked thousands of times. The GPS of a person whose world had shrunk to a triangle. The books on the shelf, 47 of them, were arranged in the order Elena had read them. She'd numbered the spines in pencil. Number 1 was a paperback novel. Number 47 was a dictionary. She'd read them all, then started over. The bathroom contained basic toiletries, soap, shampoo, toothbrush, all generic, all purchased in bulk. No mirror. Neil had removed the mirror. The television had been unplugged for approximately 2 years, based on dust accumulation. It had been Elena's only connection to the outside world. When it was taken away, or when it broke and was never replaced, she'd had nothing left except books and the wall. The wall. The forensic team found markings, not scratches, writing. Elena had used the edge of a spoon, sharpened against the concrete floor, to carve words into the drywall behind the bed. Hidden by the pillow. Invisible unless you moved the mattress. The words were a calendar. Dates, estimated, tracked by the delivery of meals. Neil brought food once a day, always at the same time. And Elena had used this rhythm to count days, then weeks, then months, then years. 3,287 meals. 9 years. And beneath the calendar, in letters carved deeper than the rest, carved with pressure, with intention, with the knowledge that these might be the only words that survived her. My name is Elena Torres. I was taken on October 11th, 2016. I am in the basement of a house. The man is Neil. I don't know the address. If you find this, tell my mother I never stopped thinking about her. Tell her I tried. Detective Aaron Park read those words on a Saturday morning. He sat on the basement floor beside the bed where Elena had died and read them 3 times. Then he went upstairs, walked outside, stood in the driveway, and did not cry, because he was a detective, and detectives process things later. But his hands shook. And when he called Rosa Torres to tell her they'd found her daughter, 9 years later, 40 miles away, in a locked room under a rich man's kitchen, his voice shook too. Mrs. Torres, this is Detective Aaron Park. I'm calling about your daughter, Elena. A gasp. Not surprise. Readiness. Rosa had been waiting for this call for 9 years. She'd rehearsed it. She'd imagined both versions, the one where Elena was alive and the one where she wasn't. Is she... I'm sorry, Mrs. Torres. Silence. The kind that isn't silence at all, but the sound of a world reorganizing itself around the worst possible information. Where? Rosa whispered. A residence in Briarwood Heights. A basement. Mrs. Torres, I need to ask you some questions, but first I want you to know, we have the man who did this. His name is Neil Cavanaugh. He's in custody. 9 years. Yes, ma'am. She was in a basement for 9 years. Yes. 40 miles from my house. Yes. I drove past Briarwood Heights, on the highway, every week for 9 years, on the way to the grocery store. Detective Park closed his eyes. She was right there, Rosa said. And I drove past. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I'm her mother. I should have felt it. Mrs. Torres, You called us every month for 5 years. You never stopped looking. You did everything possible." "Not everything. She's dead." There was nothing to say to that. Park didn't try. The autopsy revealed the cause of death: cardiac arrest brought on by severe malnutrition, chronic vitamin D deficiency, and prolonged physical confinement. Elena Torres had died because her body, after 9 years in a room without sunlight, without adequate nutrition, without medical care, had simply stopped working. Not dramatically, not violently. Quietly, the way a machine stops when the last part gives out. She'd been dead approximately 8 hours when Danny Reeves heard the knocking, which meant the knocking hadn't been Elena. The forensic team rechecked the basement, found the source: a water pipe that ran through the wall, loose in its mounting. The pressure drop Danny had been investigating caused the pipe to vibrate. 3 taps, rhythmic, repeating. Not a person. A pipe. Danny Reeves had come to fix a broken pipe. The pipe had knocked. The knock had sounded human. And because Danny was the kind of man who listened to things that didn't sound right, the kind of man who didn't ignore a sound just because someone told him the room was storage, Elena was found. Not alive, but found. Named. Returned to her mother. Removed from the locked room where a man who was worth $220 million had kept her for 9 years because he could. Neil Cavanaugh's defense team, 4 attorneys from a firm that billed $800 an hour, mounted what the press would later call the most expensive failure in Tennessee legal history. They argued the basement was a voluntary living arrangement. Elena's carved wall, "My name is Elena Torres. I was taken," destroyed that in 1 sentence. They argued Elena's death was not caused by Neil's actions. The medical examiner testified, "Ms. Torres died from the cumulative effects of 9 years of confinement without adequate nutrition, sunlight, or medical care. The proximate cause of death is the conditions of her captivity, which were maintained solely by the defendant." They argued the evidence was obtained through an illegal search. The judge ruled that Danny's 911 call established reasonable cause, and the officer's entry was lawful. They argued Neil's character: philanthropist, employer, pillar of the community. The prosecution put 3 witnesses on the stand. The first was Neil's housekeeper, Mariana Vega. She'd worked in the house for 6 years. She'd never been allowed in the basement. "He said it was storage. He said there were chemicals. He said I should never go down there." "Did you hear anything from the basement during your employment?" "Once, maybe twice. A sound, like humming. He told me it was the furnace." "Did you believe him?" Mariana's face crumbled. "I wanted to. God forgive me. I wanted to." The second witness was Neil's ex-wife, Christine Cavanaugh. Married 2017 to 2020, during Elena's captivity. She'd lived in the house, slept above the basement. "Did you know about the basement?" the prosecutor asked. "He told me it was his private office, climate-controlled for documents. He had the only key." "Did you ever hear anything?" "No. The basement was soundproofed. I know that now. I didn't know it then." Soundproofed. "He'd had it done before I moved in. I thought it was for the wine cellar he said he was building." The third witness was Claire Cavanaugh, Neil's daughter, 26. She'd visited the house periodically throughout Elena's captivity. "My father told me the basement was being renovated," Claire said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "Every time I visited, it was a different excuse. Plumbing work, mold remediation, foundation repairs. Always locked. I never questioned it." Why not? Because he was my father, and you don't question your father's locked doors. You just believe him when he says there's a reason. She paused. I'll never stop wishing I'd questioned it. The prosecution's closing argument lasted 40 minutes. The prosecutor, a woman named Karen Wells, who'd been putting violent men in prison for 20 years, stood in front of the jury and said, Elena Torres spent 3,287 days in a room she couldn't leave. She counted every one. She carved her name into the wall so that if she died, when she died, someone would know she'd been there. She wrote a message to her mother. Not help me, not save me. Tell her I never stopped thinking about her. Tell her I tried. Karen paused. Neil Cavanaugh is worth $220 million. He could have done anything with that money. He chose to build a cage. He chose to lock a door and carry the only key in his pocket every day for 9 years. He chose to bring food once a day, enough to sustain life, not enough to sustain health. He chose to remove the mirror because he didn't want Elena to see what he was doing to her. He chose to unplug the television because even the illusion of connection was too much freedom. She looked at Neil. He sat at the defense table in a suit that cost more than Elena's funeral. Elena Torres died in that basement, alone, in the dark, 40 miles from her mother. And the man who put her there went upstairs, locked the door, and went to bed. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty. All counts. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, second-degree murder. Sentencing. Life without parole. Neil stood motionless. The machine behind his face finally stopped. No calculation, no angle, just the flat, empty expression of a man who'd run out of rooms to lock. He was let out. The courtroom exhaled. Rosa Torres sat in the front row. She held a photograph of Elena, 25, smiling, taken the week before she disappeared. The photo was laminated because Rosa had held it so many times over 9 years that the original had started to wear through. Claire Cavanaugh sat 3 rows back. She didn't look at her father as he was led past. She looked at Rosa. Their eyes met. Claire mouthed 2 words. I'm sorry. Rosa nodded. Not forgiveness. Acknowledgement. The acknowledgement that some crimes create victims in every direction, and the daughter of a monster is a different kind of prisoner than the woman in the basement. But a prisoner, nonetheless. Danny Reeves wasn't in the courtroom. He was at home, in his garage, sitting in his truck with the engine off, the way he'd been sitting for an hour every evening since the day he'd heard 3 knocks that turned out to be a pipe. His wife found him there, sat in the passenger seat, didn't ask questions, just sat. I was a day late, Danny said. You weren't late. You were there. She was dead 8 hours before I showed up. And she'd have been down there forever if you hadn't. She'd have been a missing persons case until the house was demolished in 50 years. Her mother would have died not knowing. The knocking was a pipe. The knocking brought you to the wall, and you listened. That's not an accident, Danny. That's character. He looked at his hands. Plumber's hands. Scarred, calloused, the hands of a man who fixed things for a living and had accidentally fixed the only thing that mattered. Not the pipe, not the pressure, but the silence. The 9 years of silence that had ended because a pipe knocked and a plumber listened. I can't stop hearing it, he said. 3 knocks. I know. I'll hear it forever. Maybe that's okay. Maybe hearing it means you remember. And remembering means she's not forgotten. Danny sat in the truck. His wife held his hand. The garage was dark. The evening moved past the windows the way evenings do, slowly, without urgency, carrying the day's weight into the night where it could be set down. Elena Torres was buried on a Saturday. Small ceremony. Rosa, her family, a priest who'd never met Elena but who spoke about her as if he had because Rosa had told him everything. The laugh, the stubbornness, the way she sang in the kitchen, the way she called her mother every Sunday. Every Sunday. For the first 2 years of Elena's disappearance, Rosa had kept her phone charged and nearby on Sundays, waiting for the call that never came. The headstone was simple. Name, dates, and a line Rosa had chosen from Elena's wall carving. I never stopped thinking about her. I tried. Claire Cavanaugh came to the grave a week later, alone. She left flowers, white lilies, and a note she'd written and rewritten 7 times. Elena, I lived in the house above you. I didn't know. I should have. I'm sorry it's not enough. Nothing is enough. But I'll carry it, for as long as I'm here. Claire. She stood at the grave for 20 minutes. Then, she drove back to Portland and began the work of rebuilding a life on a foundation that had a locked door in it. Rosa kept calling the detective's office. Not for updates. There were no more updates. She called because calling was what she'd done every month for 9 years, and stopping felt like letting go. Detective Park answered every time. Mrs. Torres? Detective? How are you today? I'm here. That's enough. Is it? For today, yes. On the anniversary of Elena's discovery, 1 year later, Rosa went to the house on Briarwood Lane. It was empty now, seized by the state. The lawn was overgrown, the windows dark. She didn't go inside. She stood on the sidewalk and looked at the foundation, the concrete wall where Danny Reeves had knelt and heard 3 knocks from a pipe that sounded like a person. She pressed her hand against the wall. Cold. Solid. The same wall Elena had lived behind for 9 years. I'm here, mija, she whispered. I found you. Too late. But I found you. The wind moved through the empty yard. The house said nothing. Houses never do. But Rosa heard her daughter anyway. In the wind. In the silence. In the 3 knocks that weren't knocks, but were enough. Enough to bring a plumber to his knees, a detective to a basement, and a mother to the truth she'd been driving past every week for 9 years. Found. Too late. But found. And, in Elena's handwriting, carved into a wall that would outlast the house and the man and the locked door and the silence. I tried. She had. God help her, she had.